Like it or not, men tend to die first. And in many relationships, there is one person who takes care of the long term and one person who takes care of the short term financial planning. One who pays the bills, one who does the investment. So there's a little bit of experience that's being shared, but way too often we find a spouse who's left holding the bag without any of the answers to any of the questions. Sometimes they don't even know where all the money is, let alone what needs to flow out. We're going to talk today on Consider This program about things you need to know before that situation arises for you. In fact, this is such an important conversation. We're going to have 2 different radio segments or podcast segments about this. We brought in Jamie Burton. She is one of our senior advisors, the Financial Enhancement Group. And as a female, she's going to explain part of this responsibility and part of these roles to you. Join us today on Consider This program. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Jamie Burton.
And this is part 2 of what we call suddenly single. It's one of those things that sadly just happens. Mm-hmm. You know, you've been in a long-term or I guess possibly a short-term marriage or relationship, but all of a sudden something happens and one of you is gone. And Jamie did a really good job of going through the checklist of the things that we would ask you to be prepared for and talk to your spouse about before it's too late, right? So I'm just going to, at your house, I have a feeling that you and Chad talk about this and, it's, you're a little older when you got married. So it was, a little bit different. Barb and I was a month before I turned 22. Barb was 21. We didn't have anything and we didn't know what questions to ask, mm-hmm. right? But how do you talk to each other about the things that are on the checklist, the 5 critical elements?
Mm-hmm. Well, starting off with the vision, I can say that Chad and I have 2 different visions for the future. So going forward and with our discussions, we've kind of had to figure out, okay, this is what you see going on. This is what I see going on. How can we make this work together with the same financial plan? What decisions do we have to make? So with retirement, I want to retire. He wants to farm. So how can we make it work so we still have things saved to where I can retire and he can still afford to be farming? So that's the big decision we make with your life after work. And then the tax planning, we're obviously both on the same page with getting as much put into the Roth IRAs as we can, the Roth 401ks, and then having a plan with the taxable money and the tax deferred money that we're saving up. The investment playbook, right now, him and I, we can afford to take more risks. So we have our investments a little more aggressive than what a lot of the people we take care of would typically have. Life happens. We have life insurance in case something were to happen to one of us. And then we have a plan for what would happen with the kids if it was just one of us, because we probably wouldn't be able to do it on our own.
There's 3 of them, by the way.
They wouldn't be able to do that on our own. So, and then legacy, we have all of our estate planning documents in order. So we've definitely gone through all those 5 critical elements to make sure that we're set up in case something were to happen to one of us.
One of the things that I have played around with, and I would love your guys' feedback on this, but is actually putting together a family meeting workshop of here's what I would tell. Here's what I should be telling Barb, and part of this is holding me accountable, right? You've probably heard this before. The painter's house is the last one painted. We've got all of this stuff, and have been very, very blessed, and the business has worked well. But I can't tell you that Barb would know it all, right? Mm-hmm. You've probably heard me if you've listened to this show for very long. I think I've written 200 letters to my trust. That was kind of added in there. Yeah, they disappeared. All of, the last probably 10 years worth of things that I thought, and felt at different times. And, here's what I was thinking. Here was the strategy. Somehow or another got wiped out when we changed a computer system. And thank you for all of the cyber security people who made us have to change our cybersecurity rules to be able to protect the innocent. Anyhow, yours true is not the technology genius, but it's there's some things apparently you cannot retrieve. Mm-hmm. And if I die, Barb cannot retrieve my thoughts. right?
Yep.
And we find stuff all of the time. Jamie, I know you told me about a husband that died, and the wife thought that they were dead broke.
Yeah, absolutely. She's such a sweet woman. She came in and her husband passed away. He was late 50s, so really young. She had raised 3 kids, stay-at-home mom. She hadn't so much as written a check in the entire time that they were together. He took care of all the finances, all of the planning, all of the saving. She had no idea what was going on. She was so afraid that she wasn't going to be able to raise the kids and that she was going to have to go to work full time. She didn't know what she was going to do for childcare and that sort of thing. And she honestly just brought in a box of statements and everything that she could find and was like, can you please help me? So we went through the box of statements and policies and all of that, and we're able to help her find some life insurance policies, the retirement accounts that he did have saved up, and money that she had to live off of. And she was not broke at all. And so she felt a lot better after she left, but she honestly just had no idea what was going on.
But there's no reason to create that fear. And I know what happens. I mean, I've seen this happen where people, let's say you're wanting to go on a vacation and I'm wanting to save money because we have 2 different financial visions. Jamie wants to retire, apparently. That was a newsflash to me. Joe does not want to retire. That's a newsflash to her, right? That's they're going to have to kick me out.
That's not a newsflash to me.
That's not a newsflash. No, I cannot imagine waking up and not doing what I do right now. That would be my scarier thought, I guess. But as you look at this and you try to figure out how it is that you're going forward, there are some things that you just need to communicate. And if I have a propensity to save and you have a propensity to spend, if I fess up to you that we have $1 million, all of a sudden you're going, Junior, you don't need to save another dime. We're going to Disney, right? and so I've watched this happen. So there's a little chess match that can get played when you have people of a divided interest, if you will. And do not be surprised, young lady, if this role reverses as you age, where the person who said they never wanted to retire, or the common one that I see is, I'm not here to make my kids rich. They can have whatever's left, right? And that may be the dad, and then all of a sudden, and the mom's on the other side. Oh no, we got to protect them. And then all of a sudden, they get to this age. It's like we have an update every year, a family update, and we sit down, and it's like, wait a minute, this is your financial vision. Mom wants to make sure that they have something. Dad says, I want to spend it all if I can. And suddenly they've got this role reversal. It's like, what happened? Generally, it involved a two-legged creature called a grandchild. But these are those things that just take place and occur. So give us some more words of wisdom. This is your baby. What things that you think in terms of that communication between a husband and wife, of what they need to be on the same page with, because it doesn't need to be in the detail that I went into.
Right. Yeah. So the important thing is to start talking about this early. You don't want to wait until something happens to one person to really start diving into what's going on. You don't need to know all the specifics, but you just want to have a general idea of what's going on. You want to know, hey, what income do we have? Where are our assets, and what bills do we have? Those are 3 really important things to know to be able to successfully move forward if something were to happen to one spouse.
Yeah, I think that part becomes critical. So here's the ugly story. Jamie took you through the 5 critical elements, so you should have an idea of what's going on with what most people would call retirement. We call it your life after work, right? Where does the income come from? How long does it last? If you die, how much do I still get? And if you're answering the question, vice versa, right? What happens with Social Security? A lot of miscommunication in there. You'll hear people say, well, you get the biggest of the 2 checks. Well, that's not true if you started taking it at a different age for you. You need to be aware of that, but understand what your income would be, right? When you get into the tax planning part, who does the tax returns? Where are the previous returns, right? It's, believe it or not, I've had people say, I don't even know who our CPA is. It's kind of like, okay, this is going to be challenging, right? The investment playbook, you want to make sure that you're able to follow a similar path or at least transition slowly, not quickly. You don't go from $1 million brokerage account to $1 million CD any more than you should go from $1 million CD to $1 million brokerage account, right? And you don't go from all stocks to all bonds in a day. Understand the tax issues that are there as well as the risk implications that you're dealing with. But it's the legacy one, Jamie. The one that bothers me is what happens when I'm still here and I'm not fully aware of what's going on, right? And Barb doesn't know what questions to ask, and I don't have the answers to be able to give. See, I think when we talk about legacy planning, we're all built around this, well, what happens when I'm dead, right? And if you understood life expectancy and we're able to look at the charts, it's not that people are necessarily living that much longer. In fact, the last couple of years, it actually declined a little bit again. But it's not that we're living that much longer. It's that more of us are living longer, right? So you've got a lot of us that are making it into our late 80s, early 90s. And we're just not as with it as we once were at 70 or at 50 or at 30, right? Our minds begin to deteriorate. There's a point where wisdom and experience are undermined by, a little bit of dementia and incapacity to be able to learn. I see it happen every day of my life in the office. I would be naive to think that it wouldn't happen to me. I take brain tests all the time that I report to my partner group, to make sure that I'm still with it. Just because, I'm responsible for an awful lot of money. And, we want to make sure that we're on that same page. If you're doing this on your own, ladies and gentlemen, you're responsible for that for your own family, right? And you don't have to get into a real serious, here's all of the details like I've seen some people do, because that's a long conversation that not everybody wants to entertain. But at least having the basics. Here's the people, right? Most of our people have my name and our firm's name and number written on a file. And take this to Joe, take this to Aaron, take this to Grant, take this to Jamie, right? And we have all of the stuff in there that we need, and we know everything because it's already filed and put together. But again, if you want to do it on your own, that's your business. If you're looking for a fiduciary, that is our business. I would go to yourlifeafterwork.com. Consider a 90-minute next steps meeting. It's complimentary. You got to bring your stuff. Somebody on our team will sit down with you. We'll give you the things that you need to consider today, things you're going to want to consider in the future. And if we choose to partner together, what FEG will do for you, and we'll put it into writing. Now, on top of that, I do want to know your thoughts about putting together this family meeting. How do you communicate with your children? How do you communicate with your spouse? What is it that they really, really, really need to know before you don't have the ability to tell them? Go to yourlifeafterwork.com, 800-928-4001. Tell me what you're thinking.